Yes, now it's on YouTube. I can see it.
Moment.
Yes, now it's on.
Wonderful. All right. I think I have done everything correctly. All right, let's begin. All right. So, guys, here is Maria and Kristen. Maria Feekes, Adonis, Fertility International Executive Director, and I have such an honor today to speak to Kristen Armstrong. And Kristen, would you represent, share a little bit about, your company and your title?
Thanks. I'm honored to be with Maria. Adonis is an agency that I've gotten to know over the years that is one of the most ethical, honest, caring, genuine agencies I've ever worked with. So I'm honored to be here too, Maria. Yeah, I'm a lawyer. I'm licensed only in California, and I've been practicing for about 15 years. And I was driven to go to law school for healthcare. And so my specialty is actually health law, and with a subspecialty of medical tourism, which is people traveling all over the world for medical care. And that's how I got into the surrogacy niche. A lot of people that practice surrogacy law are mainly family law attorneys. I'm obviously I have the family law expertise under surrogacy, but then I have this angle of healthcare, which I think has come in as a valuable asset because of when you're dealing with hospitals, when you're dealing with the clinics, when you're dealing with patient privacy, and God forbid, suspected medical negligence. It's been an interesting additional kind of feature of my surrogacy law practice. So I love what I do. I have to say that I am proud to say that I am an idealistic lawyer. I am so happy, and I practice happy law. It's a gift. I work for myself. I have a case manager, Katie. She is my right-hand woman, and I'm her right-hand woman. She's really the boss. She keeps the whole operation going. And we have a translator, case manager in China. And so we really are global, are available 24/7. And it's an awesome way to practice law and to work because I'm part of helping build a family and we build this family on a global effort, or a global level. So it's great.
Wow. Well, I'm really, really excited. So, yes, it's incredible honor and a joy to speak with you. And I'm excited, like you said, about this additional angle that you're bringing. Okay. I have seen it working in the real life, where, just the expertise that you're bringing to parents. And I know in some cases you also worked with surrogates or gestational carriers, how they being called. So we actually decided that we're going to do a set of three part kind of conversations with you. Okay. And I really hope that families will join us and gestational carriers as well, because you're going to be really drilling down and sharing some of your expertise and some of this best practices and knowledge that you have gained over the years. So we're really grateful. I'm not sure if everyone who is watching us aware what will be those stages. So let's maybe kind of share the big picture, and then we're going to drill and jump into the topic of today. So the three-part series, what we were hoping to do. So today we're going to talk about navigating surrogacy in USA and really starting with fundamentals, correct? Kind of, talking about the difference between states and, some other very important topics. Then another part will be where we're going to be talking from the legal contract perspective for both intended parents and gestational carriers. And guys, we work a lot with surrogacy in Ukraine. So surrogate is the word that's being used internationally a lot. Where I know in America, in the United States, we're using gestational carrier, correct, as the term. So if I slip off, just know I'm using the term interchangeably. It's gestational carrier or surrogate. This is the lady that does not have a genetic connection to the baby that she's carrying. You know, so that's really probably the main differentiator, but Kristen, you will also walk us through it. But I'm using gestational carrier, surrogate interchangeably. And then the third part, we're going to be talking about kind of biggest pitfalls. So really, you know, looking at the surrogacy, not just from perspective, okay, you know, here's your attorney, you know, you want to make sure you have a great contract to start with. But Kristen, it's a long process, right? And there could be some things that are coming in the future. And if you have not thought of those risks and you have not put them into your contract and you have not mitigated them, you could be wide open for some of these pitfalls.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So, but anyway, so another thing, guys, we testing a new model where we were doing it on just Zoom, but now we're streaming on YouTube. I'm hoping we're streaming in the correct place right now and everyone can see us. If for any reason you're missing us, we will make sure to follow up with the link. So I really apologize, but you know, we're kind of testing. So let's jump in. So you already shared about you and your company. I think without any ado, let's really start with that fundamentals to lay out some common grounds. And before we started, I think you did mention, Kristen, that some people already, some families, you know, already might know about, you know, some of the basics. But but you also have seen some misconceptions or misunderstanding, even in fundamentals happening. So that's what we're kind of starting from the beginning. So bear with us. So Kristen, lay out the foundation for us.
Well, I guess I'll start with just the United States is an excellent option for surrogacy. If you're considering surrogacy, consider the United States. The United States.
Why? Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's that?
And tell us why. So you're saying, you know, it's a phenomenal place. So let's share why you think.
Anybody in the world can use surrogacy in the United States, whether you're single, whether you're married, whether you're a gay couple, whether you're a single gay person, anybody can use surrogacy in the United States. So it's definitely an option for everybody. You just have to, as you go through this process, kind of drill down more and more to where you want your baby to be born and where you should have your baby born within the United States. Because while I say that the United States overall is a great option, there are certain areas of the United States that are not great. For instance, Louisiana is incredibly risky to use to go through the surrogacy process. Is it 100% outlawed and forbidden? No, but it depends on who is the intended parent. It depends on the type of embryo, whether or not there was a donor involved, whether it's a donor egg or a donor sperm in creating that embryo. So overall, we usually avoid Louisiana, except for very, very limited circumstances and situations and it has to be very specific to the type of intended parent that you are and the type of embryo that you have. Something like California is one of the most supportive states with surrogacy. It's wonderful and it's very simple. You have to enter into a contract with the surrogate, and when your surrogate is pregnant, the lawyers then file the paperwork with a California court and requesting parental rights, and the court signs a judgment declaring the intended parent or intended parents the legal parents of the baby that the surrogate, the gestational carrier, is carrying before the baby's even born. And so when your surrogate is going to deliver, give birth, you just walk into the hospital and you have your judgment and you get the hospital bands. You are the parent. Your names go on the birth certificate. You make medical decisions for the baby. You get the hospital bill, and then you go home with your baby. There's no hearings. There's no long drawn out court process. There's no investigations of people's homes. It's a wonderful, very streamlined, efficient process in California and other states. Texas is very efficient. Washington is efficient, or more surrogacy friendly, we call it. So if you're considering surrogacy in the United States, it's a wonderful option. It's a viable option, and then you just want to be sure of which state you utilize surrogacy under, and to decide which state is going to be dictated by where the surrogate gives birth.
Okay. Okay, so let me write it down. That's actually very important. So it's not really where the surrogate maybe holds the residency, or where parents are holding residency, but where the birth is being planned to be.
Correct. I have intended parents, two fathers from Belgium, for instance. They don't have United States citizenship. They don't have United States residency. They're in Belgium. I have two other intended fathers from Spain, two other intended parents from France. None of them are United States citizens. And it's the surrogate. It's where the surrogate is going to give birth that's the deciding factor of whether or not to use that state for surrogacy. So the surrogate can live, for instance, in Tennessee.
Okay.
But if the intended parents have their embryos stored in Colorado, she can travel to Colorado for the embryo transfer and then come home to Tennessee and give birth.
Okay.
It's all medical tourism. It's all people traveling around. And meanwhile, the intended parents live in France.
Right. Wow, this is really incredible. So I think that clears up a lot, because some of the things that, yes, like, you started with Louisiana, for example, and parents in Louisiana might think, well, I'm in Louisiana, therefore, my dream of a baby through surrogacy is not a possibility. What you are saying, am I understanding you correctly? And I know I might be asking basic questions, but really that's kind of some of the questions that families have been asking ahead of times as well. So in this case, even if families are from Louisiana, or if surrogate is from Louisiana, but the birth and the steps of the process are happening there. I'm not using Louisiana because you use it as like one extreme state, not friendly to surrogacy. So would you please
Yes, I would recommend staying out of Louisiana altogether with the surrogate.
With surrogate. So surrogate cannot be from
Louisiana. If the surrogate lives there, no surrogates from Louisiana, because the birth is going to happen there.
Unless parents choose for the birth to happen in another state, right? And surrogate agrees to it.
That is a possibility, but Louise, this is a great question, and this is why when you are speaking with your agent, like when you're speaking with Adonis and you're considering surrogacy and you're considering, you're looking at possible surrogate candidates, the first thing you want to do is find out where she lives and where the birth is supposed to happen. So, and then you want to speak with the attorney and confirm from the beginning, before contracts are even drafted, okay, is this a good match? So when the surrogate, depending on the state, let me put it this way. If the surrogate lives in Louisiana, as the attorney, I would say don't do it at all. Even if the surrogate will give birth, even if we could say, well, we'll all agree that the surrogate is going to give birth in another state, I would argue, or I would say, to protect everybody, Louisiana is very unsupportive of surrogacy in most cases, that even for the surrogate to travel to another state is not enough to, it's just not worth it. Because for instance, if you have an embryo and you're a heterosexual couple, but you used an egg donor, and you use a surrogate you want to use a surrogate in Louisiana, that's actually outlawed, because the intended mother does not have a genetic connection to the embryo because they used an egg donor. So if we were to use a surrogate in Louisiana, and she was to be sitting there in Louisiana pregnant, And even with the intention that she's going to give birth in another state, Louisiana would still view this as a criminal violation. So it's best that for a state like Louisiana, we just stay out of that state. But there's other states that they might request a court hearing. They might request a couple of additional loopholes. I'm sorry, hoops to jump through to establish parental rights, where it might make more sense to have the surrogate just relocate to another state to give birth, or that state will honor an out-of-state judgment. So we can use, for instance, California law, and if the birth is going to happen, for instance, in Tennessee, we get the out-of-court judgment certified in Tennessee, and then it's the same process as if the birth happened in California. You walk into the hospital, you show the hospital your judgment, it's been certified by a Tennessee court, and you have parental rights immediately. So so you are correct in that we can definitely have cases and journeys where the surrogate lives in one state, perhaps she travels to another state for the embryo transfer, and perhaps she travels to another state to give birth, but it's going to be state specific. And off the bat, I would say stay out of Louisiana for any reason. There would only be very small exceptions. It would mainly be like if we had a heterosexual couple where the embryo was from their egg and their sperm, then possibly Louisiana would not prohibit that surrogacy arrangement. But even then, I would want to make sure that we are super careful and we confirm with Louisiana lawyers that this is okay. But that's one end of the spectrum. And then you have another state like California, or Washington, where it's very simple. It's very supportive.
And I'm so grateful that you're walking us through that. Again, we didn't mean to pinpoint only just one state, but what we're trying to
It's important.
Right. What happens is, yes, of course, if you're working through the agency, for example, like ourselves, this is our due diligence to make sure, we're working with attorneys. We really presenting to you the candidate that matches all of the requirements and makes your life easier and really makes the process safe. At the end, we always like to say that we're starting the journey, your parenthood journey, with your end goal in mind. And we're kind of backtracking from it. Because worst case scenario that we could imagine is you have a baby, you went through all of these incredible steps and milestones, right? And then you are not able, to hug and be with your baby. That is just a nightmare that we would not wish for anyone. So doing this due diligence, this is part of our role of working with attorneys. But I think it's important because to kind of still pay attention to those topics, because quite a few parents, right, they're saying we want to do a journey on our own, right? And we do hear this question, well, why even have an agency? Why even, consider, I just have a perfect surrogate, here it is, we have a handshake, we're going forward, right? So guys, we equipping you from all the angles that at least, we don't have this, sense of ownership. Go just with us. The same as Kristen here. She's not saying, well, I'm here, come to me, right? We all are coming from the perspective, guys, let us equip you with knowledge and maybe some good questions to ask, right? And then you make a decision how you follow. So from what we're hearing right now, at least absolutely, surrogacy in USA 101 is please ask questions where the residency of your surrogate, where your surrogate is coming from, right? Which state she's coming from. And please check in with attorney or legal help. Not just search on the internet, but do check with legal help to understand what are the pros and cons and are there any risks.
Correct. Exactly. Just get yourself fully informed as much as you can. Google is excellent. You can just research surrogacy friendly states in the United States, and you can see which ones are supportive, which ones are not supportive. Definitely reach out to local counsel. I mean, if you're considering doing an independent journey, that's definitely an option. having an agency though does, if the agency is knowledgeable and experienced and ethical, and you get some, some referrals, you talk to other people who have used that agency and you research the agency, having an agency is going to actually really protect you on many levels. It's going to protect you as far as steering you in the right direction with matching you with a surrogate in a surrogate friendly state, which is what we've been talking about, up until now. But also the agency knows the right fertility clinics. They know when a fertility clinic is suggesting unnecessary medical treatment. They know when things are a little like kind of questionable of why are we doing this test? Why are we doing this? Why are they ordering this? The agencies are equipped with that knowledge. Also, an agency will know how to navigate you through the health insurance aspect and the medical bills of your surrogacy journey, because there's two phases to the surrogate's medical bills. The first phase is all of, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just the lawyer, Maria, you're the agency.
Oh, right. No, but I love that you provide this perspective. So yes, please.
So the way I look at it as a lawyer, as a non-medical
and also working through so many cases, you obviously see that.
You have two phases from the medical healthcare aspect. You have the first phase, which is she's receiving all of her treatment at the IVF clinic. So she goes there for her pre-screening because we want to make sure that she's a viable candidate for surrogacy. Yeah. So the fertility clinic is going to do a pre-screening of her and then qualify her as a good surrogate candidate. That is a medical expense that the intended parents are responsible for. There's also the psychological screening. So once she goes through these screenings, then she receives medical treatment through the IVF clinic. And that is in preparation of the embryo transfer, that's receiving the embryo transfer, and then monitoring. So she's monitored through ultrasounds before and after the embryo transfer and blood tests. Those all are within the confines of the IVF clinic, and maybe a monitoring clinic that's remote and close to the surrogate's home. That's the first phase, and that's usually, correct me if I'm wrong, usually on a cash pay basis where the intended parents are responsible for those expenses themselves.
In many cases, yes, because there is very seldom that insurance could cover something like that. And of course, we do the revision of insurances and everything. There are some companies, I start seeing some companies, not insurance companies, but also some companies where people work with or work at, where they're providing phenomenal benefits. So we start seeing some movement as well. So that's another thing, please always, do triple check, with your employee benefit, do you have any options? But on general, unfortunately, yes, majority of those expenses, you're paying for everything. So it is important to understand and have advocates on your side, what's important. Yes. Exactly. And working with an agency, that agency is going to know during that first phase with the IVF clinic, like, okay, that test makes sense, or I don't understand why not that the agency is going to be practicing medicine. No. But the agency kind of will know the questions to ask, and will know, like, okay, what is that charge? What's that? What are we doing here? Everything looks good. And they also work with clinics that they've worked with for a really long time as well. So that's why an agency that's one of the reasons why an agency holds value versus if you were to do an independent journey. So then once she reaches about 12 weeks of pregnancy, she graduates, like literally everybody uses the term graduate. She graduates from the IVF clinic to her treating OBGYN. And usually that's the OBGYN that's going to deliver the baby. And the OB might be even a specific medical group. And so she's with that medical group, that OBGYN, for the remainder of her pregnancy. This is another way that the surrogacy agency can help you, because the surrogacy agency
especially when you are an international intended parent, the surrogacy agency can help you interpret her existing health insurance, if she has health insurance, because sometimes those medical bills with that OBGYN and that medical group are covered by that insurance. Sometimes it might not be covered by that insurance.
It's
And
really
so
important
the
to understand.
agency, what's that? Yeah.
Very important to understand, yes, from the very beginning, what is covered, what is not.
Correct. So yes, an agency costs money, but the agency can save you potentially tens of thousands of dollars in medical bills. And also, you know, the agency is going to would help with, or this is something that you can do on your own. You always want to make sure that you have life insurance for the surrogate and complications insurance for the surrogate. That's something that you can definitely purchase on your own if you're doing an independent journey, but there's also the surrogacy agency that can help you get those two types of insurance. The complications insurance is usually if, God forbid, she has a hysterectomy or she loses fallopian tubes. And I always require that for my clients, whether I'm representing the surrogate or I'm representing the intended parent and I'm doing an independent journey, where I'm putting together the contract, there has to be life insurance. There has to be. I've actually had cases where I was representing the surrogate and I received the first draft and there was no compensation for an invasive procedure like an abortion or an amniocentesis, and there was no compensation if she died. There was no life insurance. And I sent it back to the attorney representing the intended parents, and he said, bless his heart, he said, you know, I don't know if they're going to like this. And I said, I don't care. If they're not willing to give her compensation for undergoing an invasive procedure or provide life insurance, I'm going to tell her to walk away, because that's just basic human decency. So sorry to go off on a tangent, Maria.
Oh, no. This is so huge because once again, I really appreciate when working with you because you have so many perspectives. And it's okay, you know, even as an attorney, you just shared a very great perspective. You're saying we have to, with such a human intensive process, right? It's not like you know, it's not like you going, let's say you're purchasing a home and you have a contract or you're doing some contract work. It's not like that, guys. No matter how much we want to separate emotions and personal aspects and values, it's all part of the surrogacy journey, right? Because it's human lives, it's human investment in every step of the way from both sides, and it's a creation of life that we're talking about, right? So it's wonderful because you came through so many perspectives that you could take off just the legal hat, right? And say, okay, but what does make sense and what is fair? And once again, the conversation, we're going to come back in our third part about those pitfalls. That's, you just kind of highlighted one of them for us, right? You know, if you cannot think about that and it's not built in, it could be a really difficult situation in the future. Many things that I think as attorney you're trying to predict, you're not saying that they will happen. You're not saying that your surrogate is, you know, bad or the parents are bad. You're not, but you're saying even if it's 1% chance of this incredible tragedy that could be possible, and you're saying yes, loss of life could be a possibility of pregnancy. It could be, right? So how we're protecting sites. So we started with the difference between states, and you're saying, you know, do search and research with states, you know, coming back to 101, you know, which states are good, which not, you know, and where surrogate or gestational carrier resides. Then you're saying also, you know, understand some of those risks and make sure you have very good team around you who could kind of predict those risks for you. I love about you where you know, a lot of times when working with attorneys, what some of our families have noted to us that they like, well, unless we ask, we're not going to get questions. We really love working with team, you know, like yourself, where you proactively pointing out to some of these basics and some of the fundamentals and saying, have you thought of that? I think this is extremely important. So what are some other things that you're saying as far as basic 101, right? Without going deep into the contract area, roles, responsibilities, and right, it's going to be our second part. What are the basic things that people should be, when they're thinking surrogacy in the United States, what do you think?
Well, we talked a little bit about the clinic and the medical bills.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about obtaining parental rights, and making sure that we use a state that is surrogacy friendly, or a state that will accept a judgment from a surrogacy friendly state. Like, for instance, before I mentioned how Tennessee, we can bring a California judgment over to Tennessee, and Tennessee will accept that after we have it certified. So something that I always recommend my intended parents to do, is to talk with their local lawyer on how to bring their baby back and what they want as far as what kind of requirements or little nuances exist in their country. For instance, France, they want a judgment before we need to do a judgment in the United States, before the baby's born, so that the intended parents can come and they immediately have parental rights with over their child at birth. But for France, and this is me not being a French lawyer, for France, they need a post-birth judgment as well, that states that this woman gave birth to this baby, and it was declared during and after the birth that this woman was not the mother, that she gave birth to the baby, but the baby belongs to these two parents or this one parent. So after the baby was born, in that particular case, I had to go back to the court and get an amended judgment with that verbiage that the intended parents are now going to bring to the France vital records, so that their baby can get citizenship in France. So that's a big question or area that you want to take care of before. Sorry, the sun is finally coming out in California. We've had all this rain.
A lot of, Southern California. You're in San Diego, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk with your local council on, how do I bring my baby back?
Okay.
And make sure that, one, you can, and you should be able to, but what kind of paperwork needs to be in place? What does the birth certificate actually need to say? Because I have worked with a couple of countries where the intended mother, the surrogate actually needs to be on the birth certificate, and then removed. We have to amend the birth certificate to remove her. And it's very country specific. So that's one other thing I would highly recommend.
Okay. So so once again, start with your end of the journey in mind, right? So make sure you understand in every detail on how that obtaining of parental rights and every step that has to be with you being a parent coming back with your baby, how it looks like. Okay, that's excellent. So there is a question, and we're going to come back to more. It says, are there any federal regulations regarding surrogacy in the US? So is it all state run, or is it also federal regulation? That's one part of the question. And the second one, do many states allow surrogacy without medical indication and permit traditional surrogacy? That's probably means, well, for the families that are same-sex marriage, right, or only single parents, so let's say male, that question would not apply. But if it's heterosexual couple, right, and there is a mother, does it need to be a medical indication or not? So which question would you want to start with, federal or the medical?
It's definitely not. There's no federal regulation.
No, not for surrogacy. Okay.
Correct. It's definitely state specific.
Okay.
So as we talked about before, just make sure that you confirm that that state is very surrogacy friendly, and that it's and your attorney and your agency understand the processes.
Okay.
Does there need to be a medical indication? In many states, no. For instance, California, you can wake up and say, I want to be a mom and I'm going to use a surrogate,
Okay.
and you can do it. I have several clients that are a heterosexual couple or even a lesbian couple, and they are using a surrogate, even though the intended mother is, in theory, capable of carrying the baby. A lot of people just choose to not choose to use a surrogate and not be pregnant. So there does not have to be some kind of medical issue or some kind of medical hoop to jump through in order to use a surrogate in the United States. And then what was the next question?
And we'll come back to the second question. And you mentioned in some states. So it means that in some states, going back, that actually even for intended parents, there could be a requirement. Is that, or pretty much majority of the states, again, except very unfriendly states, medical indication is not an issue?
Correct. Like medical indication should not be an issue. I
Okay.
just say that there might be a state where medical indication is an issue.
But you have not
It
had
needs
it
to be an
yet.
issue, like Louisiana could,
Okay.
Louisiana could argue, well, the embryo is your genetic material, it's your egg intended mother and your sperm intended father. So the argument must, like, we're going to allow this surrogacy to occur because for whatever reason there's a medical issue. Like Louisiana might permit it under the justification that there's a medical issue, but it's still very, very risky. But overall, other states don't even require you to explain yourself.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, that makes
yeah.
sense. Thank you so much. And the second question was, well, actually, this is the second question because we talked about the federal and we talk about medical indication. And so I think, and it's a great question because, like, for example, we also do surrogacy in Ukraine. Surrogacy in Ukraine, the law actually that governs surrogacy is on federal level, and it does require medical indication. It's only available to heterosexual married couples and with a medical indication. So that's what, once again, like you started the whole, discussion by saying, if you're considering surrogacy, United States is definitely a very good place to do surrogacy program in for so many reasons that you already described. Yes, because it really provides opportunity for surrogacy for so many different types of families and different outcomes. And guys, when I'm saying families, like I never could get used to the, I don't know, just again, because the whole journey is so personal. I'm having a hard time by saying clients or patients because nothing wrong with you guys. It's just, like I feel like every family has a different journey. You could be one parent, you could be, two parents from, different perspectives, whatever it is. So that's why I'm using families. But when I'm saying that, I also mean like one parent. That to me is also family, because you're considering a baby and you building your future unit of family. So anyway, okay, wonderful. So this is very important to know. Talk us through phases of just, attorney. So we kind of understand the role of attorney more. So first of all, I know you mentioned, maybe you didn't mention it today yet, but you were kind of saying that, yes, sometimes you're saying you're representing surrogate, sometimes you're representing intended parents. So that means that there is always, in the United States, there needs to be two attorneys representing two different sides, correct?
Yes. California specifically, the black letter law requires that both sides have to have their own attorney. You have to be represented by attorney. And the language of the law actually says of your choosing. So agencies will provide you with a lawyer, but you are free to go and choose your own lawyer. The agencies will usually provide, like they'll say, okay, this is going to be your lawyer, or here's a list of lawyers that you can.
List of recommendations, yes.
Yeah. The you always want to make sure that an agency provides you with a list or provides you with, I mean, they're going to provide you somebody that is very familiar with the laws in that specific state, and also are familiar with that agency's program. So you can go and choose your own lawyer, but you want to get somebody that is very knowledgeable of this area of law. Like if you go and just pick a general lawyer who's not familiar with this, then they are not going to know the key components that need to be in the surrogacy contract. And it's going to be a lot more expensive because these contracts are anywhere from 36 to 45 pages. If you're dealing with a surrogacy lawyer that the agency recommends, or a surrogacy lawyer that a lawyer that specializes in this area of law, we usually all have a working template, and then we just insert that specific agency's program specifications, and that saves a lot of time. That saves a lot of money for the intended parent. So everybody needs to have their own separate lawyer, and this is the requirement under California. When you want this, the intended parents normally pay for the surrogate's lawyer as well. And you need this because this is worth the investment. Not only is it required under the law, but it's worth the investment because you never want the surrogate to come back and say, well, I want to keep the baby. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Now, the chances of that happening are like 0.
But it is a risk, you say.
0.01%. In my 15 years of doing this, I've never had a surrogate say, I changed my mind, I want to keep the baby. And I think it's also interesting, I think it's worth pointing out that, Maria has talked about how this is a very emotional, personal process. It is definitely emotional and personal. And I think it's terrifying. And everybody has a fear. They have some type of fear. The surrogate is worried that the intended parents are not going to take the baby. And the intended parents are sometimes worried that she's going to keep the baby. So if you're ever stressed out about that or anything, talk to the agency, talk to the lawyer, and talk to the clinic. But I can nearly guarantee you that we all have a fear, but it never actually, it's just a fear. And that everything is going to be okay. So, but you want to have everybody have their own lawyer so that they are fully informed of their rights and obligations. And I'll stop there.
Okay. No, that's wonderful. Okay, so another thing, so each side has the lawyer. There is a question came about the end of the journey. How long does it take to complete paternity, maternity paperwork, and so forth? Let's hold on this question, but let's kind of start from the beginning. So at the beginning, so let's say surrogate, was found, medically approved. What happens next? I just want also parents to understand the timeline and the role of an attorney, because you're talking through the legal side. At which point you're going to be jumping and what to expect. So surrogate approved, parents are ready to go. What's next?
Okay, so this is great. You're matched. She's passed the medical screening. She's approved. The next step is the embryo transfer, but she cannot receive that embryo transfer until there is a surrogacy contract. So that's where the lawyers come into play. So the lawyers, you will be introduced to your lawyer, or you'll be given a list of lawyers, and that the agency knows that these lawyers know what they're doing. They have the experience. They have the contract template. They're familiar with the agency's program. So they're not starting from scratch. So you will retain one of the lawyers. The surrogate will retain a lawyer. The intended parent's lawyer will draft up the contract. And I tell my clients, you tell me how fast you want this. I have gotten contracts drafted, reviewed by the intended parents, reviewed by the surrogate, signed within 24 hours.
Wow.
So I have other clients that, they're going on vacation. I wish I was going with them. So you tell me how fast you want to go, and I will move. Because my belief is, I just assume that everybody wants this yesterday, and I never want legal to slow this down. So the legal, normally for me, in my cases, the legal like the time an intended parent retains me, and I start drafting and reviewing it with the intended parent, and the surrogate reviews it with her attorney, and then we sign. That's usually 2 weeks, maybe, maybe 3 weeks. I mean, it really depends on how fast the intended parents want to move and how fast the surrogate wants to move. So once that contract is signed, and let me backtrack that there's not a lot of back and forth. There's not a lot of contract negotiation with the contract. It's happy law. Everybody is coming and for the same purpose. The surrogate is going to carry the baby and not keep the baby, and the intended parents are going to take the baby and pay for the medical bills and pay for the surrogate's expenses and her compensation. So everything is pretty much agreed upon by the time it's time for me to draft the contract. So 2 weeks is plenty of time for this legal process to be started and done. Once the legal process is done, in that everybody signs the contract in front of a notary, I issue my legal clearance to the fertility clinic. And then the fertility clinic goes, okay, now it's time to schedule the embryo transfer. So they'll look at the surrogate's menstrual cycle, and they'll think, okay, you're going to ovulate here or there, and time to start the injections. And then the embryo transfer is scheduled. And then we all wait.
Got it. Okay.
And wait.
Perfect. That's perfect. So that's when you first introduce. Then when is your next role? Is it once you get pregnant? Once surrogate is pregnant, that's when you start working on, like you said, those prenatal orders and everything. What's next?
So the next step is we all sit and wait, and we want a positive pregnancy by heartbeat. So when she's about 8 or 9 weeks pregnant, she'll go back to the fertility clinic for an ultrasound. And hopefully we see the little heartbeat flickering on the screen. And then I always want to wait until about 13 to 16 weeks of pregnancy. Because after the first trimester, I personally want to wait until at least 12 weeks. I know a lot of my colleagues also wait until about 12 to 16 weeks. Once the pregnancy reaches 12 to 16 weeks, we start drafting up the paperwork, and we then send it out for everybody's signature. And that's actually really simple. You don't need to have it notarized. I do prefer that I get your original signatures back. Some courts will let me send over a copy of the signature. Some courts, like Los Angeles, everything, they accept electronic signatures.
Wow.
So bottom line is that establishing the parental rights, that paperwork is very, very easy. We just sign it, we submit it to the court, and some courts take 3 weeks. Some courts, like San Diego, take six to 8 weeks to sign the judgment. So we want to get the paperwork filed by about week 24 of the pregnancy.
Okay, got it.
But don't worry. If something happens where we file the paperwork and we're still waiting for the judgment, and the baby decides, because babies are on their own schedule, if the baby's like, no, I'm coming now, and the baby comes early and it's week 28 and we don't have the judgment yet, the lawyers can file something called an emergency request with the court, and we can sometimes get the judgment the same business day or within 1 to 2 business days.
Okay.
And the hospitals know this. The hospitals, they know, like, if a baby comes a little early, they should understand that we don't have the judgment yet. And if anybody is pushing back or anything, you call your lawyer, and the lawyer will politely talk to them, and everything will 100% be fine. We normally have at least 5 days after the birth to get that judgment for the purposes of filling out the birth certificate.
5 days.
There's plenty of time, and
Okay.
we can get it all done.
Got it. Well, that actually now brings us, so let's say everything is in order, baby didn't come earlier, you have your, judgment, by about week 26, then
Yeah.
we're waiting for the baby birth, right? What, that comes back to the question, how long does it take to complete the paternity, maternity paperwork at the end of the program? So,
Well, I think what you mean by paternity, maternity paperwork is the birth certificate.
birth certificate, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's going to be that the lawyers don't do that, and we don't need to. When you
Okay.
go to the hospital's going to walk you through that. When you go to the hospital, you'll have the judgment. Normally I tell my clients, I tell the intended parents, bring 2 certified copies of the judgment. The hospital's going to keep one, and then vital records. There's always a representative from Vital Records walking around,
Yeah,
each
Mhm.
post delivery room, and that Vital Records representative is going to take the other copy, and that Vital Records representative right then and there is going to assist you in filling out the birth certificate application, and then they're going to hand you a piece of paper, which is a kind of a holder for the birth certificate, and also there's going to be another piece of paper telling you where to actually go and pick up the birth certificate. And if you go online, the birth certificate is supposed to be ready in about 14 days. Normally it's ready in about 5. And you just go to that Vital Records office and you pick up your birth certificate. I always recommend getting a few copies of the birth certificate and then check with your country on whether or not you have to get an apostille on your birth certificate.
So that could be done. And if anyone doesn't know, apostille really it's an additional step of legalization, vital documents. It's where Secretary of State typically, I think it's for United States, it's always Secretary of State office going to be saying that yes, whoever signed your document, the judge, whoever had the power to do so, they're in the registry. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So really from what it seems, it's just so different, the role of attorney from, some other countries, in the surrogacy process. So when everything is going well, right? Well, I'm saying well, meaning everyone is playing by the rules, there is no like extra, surrogate is not holding baby, parents are not leaving the baby, right? So your role is more really ending at that judgment that is happening before the baby is born. Is this correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, unless parents are from some states that require some extra steps for them, or from a country that also requires some, like you were saying, in situation of friends, there was post-birth steps, that's when you continue. But typically, if everything is well, your role is you more at the beginning of drafting the agreements and then doing the pre-birth orders with the official judgment.
Yep. It's usually just a 2-step legal process.
Got it. Okay, that is so helpful. Have you talked to us, because we're also talking about basic, you will touch on, but I think you told me so many times about escrow. Probably everyone knows about it, but in case someone is still, confused or not, it's something like literally in some states is written in law, right? Or maybe in all states. So talk us through that. What's escrow and why it's important for the surrogacy journey?
Okay, escrow is basically a special savings account, checking account, that is monitored, managed by a company, a third party. And the intended parents deposit money into this escrow, and this escrow, the money, the funds are designated for the surrogate's compensation. They could be designated for the legal bills. They're designated for the medical bills. And the surrogate contract that the intended parents enter into will say when specific deposits need to be made. For instance, there needs to be a significant amount of money, tens of thousands of dollars, deposited before the embryo transfer. For obvious reasons, we don't want a surrogate pregnant and there's no money. I had a case like that.
Oh my God, that would be a nightmare. And we really, guys, believe us, we don't want to be collectors. That's the worst thing to be in. Like you said, everyone is doing their part, surrogate is moving, baby is developing, and suddenly, right, questions, like you said, there is no money. Wow, this is nightmare.
So for instance, like Maria said, some laws, some states require this. California requires an escrow company be used when an agency's involved. I'm going to just kind of share my personal opinion. California, because I always have a personal opinion to share, but
That's what we're talking to you.
Yeah, California does not require escrow when you're doing an independent journey. If I was representing the surrogate in an independent journey, I would say there's going to be an escrow account. I absolutely would require it as the lawyer for the surrogate. So I always tell my intended parent clients that whether you're working with an agency or you're going to try to do this independently, use an escrow account. So because the surrogate's attorney I think should require it no matter what. And it's just best practices. Another thing that my colleagues know I'm not shy about this is that in California, the lawyers can also hold escrow for the journey. I don't do that. I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with the numbers. I don't do it. And the reason why I don't do it is because when you're the attorney for the intended parents, that is your role, and I have to advocate for you. But if I'm managing the escrow account as well, and you as my client say, you know what, I don't think the surrogate is complying enough, I want to stop next month's payment. As your attorney, I should be able to say, okay, let's take steps to stop payment. But then here I am over here managing the escrow, and I have to wear that specific hat, and I have to then tell you, where you happen to be my client over here, that no, she's entitled to the payment. So it invites always a conflict. And a lot of attorneys can handle it. I mean, a lot of attorneys, they do it. I don't. I lovingly, I have had agencies that request, like, can you please hold escrow? And I say no. I want it separate. I want to be able to protect the intended parents and not feel conflicted. So the escrow is a wonderful thing because it protects everybody. It also protects the intended parents because if you're doing an independent journey, for instance, you're obviously talking with the surrogate more directly. And I have a lot of people ask me, like, oh my gosh, this is the area of law you do. Like, are the surrogates always taken advantage of? And I said, actually, it's usually the intended parents.
Oh, wow.
The surrogate tries to take advantage of them. Like, the surrogate will all of a sudden say, I need money for a blender. I'm not kidding. And the fact that we have the escrow, you have this third party escrow company saying, no, you're not entitled to that. And the intended parents can say, sorry, it's not my fault. And they're protected. Yeah. So
I'm so glad you bring it up because we actually had a conversation. For our surrogacy in Ukraine, we right now do not allow actually direct communication of surrogate with intended parents. The rules are a little bit different. There is no escrow account. There is still just because legality is different. But that's why you just show this vulnerability, because what happens is, guys, when you don't have that third party, when someone comes to you and saying, hey, help me, yes, and suddenly you're in a position, you're like, gosh, like, I don't think it's fair, but I don't know how to say it's not fair because you're pregnant. I don't want to make you upset, things like that. And it's what we're learning. It's not because people are mean or bad. Like, we don't want to say every person is mean-hearted. It's not like that. We under hormones, right? We're emotional. Yeah. We have different perspectives. We have different expectations, guys. Just the fact that you discuss your value system, but there is still different backgrounds you're coming from. For one family, it could be okay. For the other one, it's not okay. So yes, you just like, I just imagine that crazy situation where you like blender, right? From surrogate's perspective, you might say, well, it's pennies. But for parents, they're like, well, gosh, why? Wow. So yes, have escrow and have a third party escrow. Definitely, like I don't like the idea of attorney being involved.
I just can't do it. I don't know how my colleagues do it.
Yeah.
I mean, and you bring up a point about emotions and hormones and like everybody has their perspectives. This is hard. Like this is an emotional journey. And I always tell my intended parents when I'm representing them or my surrogate, I say, look, no question, you and me, we're talking, it's confidential. No question is off limits. Like, because my surrogate clients, they'll say, well, I mean, am I allowed to get this or that? Like, I don't want to come across greedy. And I go, look, you can ask me anything. And I will tell you flat out directly, no, you are going to come across crazy and, don't do that. But I also want them to speak freely with me because they're doing a lot. Like yes, they are getting paid and and the intended parents are unable to have a baby for whatever reason. But there's nothing, and they're going to benefit from this. There's no reason why the surrogate can't benefit too. Like this money can change her life. Like I have clients
That's
that
one of the
buy
reasons why
homes.
she's
Like
doing it.
it's amazing. And so when you find yourself kind of just being emotional, talk to the agency, talk with your lawyer, and we're here to help you stay on earth.
Right, and get through it healthy and stress-free as much as possible. When you hold your baby, we don't want you to have gray hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and the escrow will help with that. It really will.
Okay, wonderful. We a little bit over the hour. So if there is anything in closing or anything we have missed, and I know like there is so much gold that you're going to be bringing during your next session when you're specifically talking about the contract. I think you really going to dig deep into some of these roles, responsibilities, and some areas that potentially could be areas of conflict, right? That you should think through beforehand and put it in. Anything to close our conversation about 101 basics?
The only thing I would say is that you are so supported. If you do your, I can't speak anymore. Do your due diligence, be a part of this journey and, let us support you. Let us help you. This whole process, I mean, this is part of parenthood. It's nothing about parenthood is 100% controllable. And we're all just going to try to do our best to, build your family with you. And it's an amazing process and it's a supported process. It's surrogacy in the United States can definitely help you realize your family, and working with an agency is definitely a great resource of support and knowledge. And if you ever have any questions, you can just message me. My website, I don't know if Maria was able to share my website. Just send me a message anytime. And we're always here for you.
We're going to add that. Thank you so much. We're going to add the website to the message, to the description of the video. Absolutely. Well, Kristen, I cannot thank you enough. So thank you for all the incredible work you do. Thank you for all the babies that you kind of, I don't want to say how, but you were part of, those miracles. And yes. So
I think I was like, I'm building this baby too.
Yes, you are. Yes, you
Thanks,
absolutely
Maria.
are. Thank you. And we cannot wait for the next 2 sessions. All right, guys.